Holly the Hummingbird, written by David Van Wieren. Music by David Van Wieren. It was a hot, early summer day in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. A little hummingbird named Holly was just waking up. Holly had a reputation for being a very hard-working hummingbird. She got up before the other birds every morning to gather nectar from the flowers. Bzz, 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 she flew. Her wings moved so fast they made a buzzing sound like a bumblebee. She stopped at a bird bath first to freshen up for the day. The bird bath was made of cement. There was a statue of a little girl in a Polly Flinders dress holding the bird bath bowl on her head. In the middle of the bowl was a fountain. Just then Bonnie the bumblebee flew by.
Good morning, Bonnie.
Well, good morning to you, too.
Bonnie shouted back and then bounced off a window near the bird bath. Bonnie wore glasses, but it was a long time since she had a new prescription. Holly wanted to tell Bonnie that scientifically it was impossible for Bonnie to fly. But then she thought how amazing it is what you can accomplish when you believe wholeheartedly that something is possible. So Holly let Bonnie go on flying anyway. Make sure you don't tell the bumblebees they can't fly.
I just have to lose another 100th of an ounce,
exclaimed Bonnie.
You look stunning,
Holly remarked.
Why, thank you.
Bonnie blushed. After fluttering her wings to get the water off, Holly flew through the town.
Good morning, Mr. Bear.
Holly greeted a large bear named Barry lumbering across the street.
Good morning, Mr. Moose.
Holly greeted a large moose named Mikey who was munching on some aspen leaves.
Good morning, Mr. Raccoon.
She greeted a raccoon named Randy as he wandered off into the woods.
Good morning, Mrs. Skunk.
She greeted a very lonely skunk named Sylvia waddling down a dusty alleyway.
Good morning, Holly.
Said Sylvia.
Bang!
Holly shouted at a possum.
Oh, you got me.
The possum immediately played dead.
Now, where did I see that spider yesterday?
Holly wondered.
Ah, yes, behind the general store.
She remembered. She flew around the building and saw the sun shining off the dew clinging to the spider's web. It was a very ornate circular web between two bushes with a banded garden spider in the very center. The spider had just finished a large horsefly for his breakfast. Holly flew up to it and grabbed the spider with her beak.
What do you think you're doing?
The spider asked.
You'll see,
said Holly as she flew back to her nest. There in the nest was a little baby hummingbird named Heidi. Holly dropped the spider into Heidi's mouth and Heidi gulped it down.
Delicious, Mom.
Heidi exclaimed after she burped.
I'll bring some nectar home with me after I'm done working the field.
Holly reassured Heidi.
See you later, my tomato.
Heidi laughed as her mom flew away. Holly flew off to a field of wildflowers on the side of a mountain near the town of Tin Cup. The sun was shining brightly now, and the dew was slowly evaporating off the grass. There were assorted flowers, red, white, pink, yellow, blue, and Holly's favorite, purple flowers. Holly made her way to the far end of the field so that she could work her way back toward town and have less distance to travel when her work was done. Many birds worked the fields, including Rocky Mountain bluebirds, tufted titmouse, cowbirds, robins, magpies, yellow and goldfinches. There was even a woodpecker working on a rotten log. It was eating all the termites in it. Holly flitted from flower to flower, drinking the nectar to nourish herself. Every time she went to a different flower, a little pollen stuck to her beak and feathers and would fall off into the next flower. This is how she pollinated the whole field. A lot of birds thought that working the field was hard work, but Holly was having fun while she worked. She loved to hum a song as she buzzed around.
What's all that racket?
Yelled a groundhog named Gary as he popped his head out of one of his holes in the ground.
Well, why are you so chipper?
Gary asked Holly.
I'm having fun working,
Replied Holly.
It's too hot to be working out in the sun.
Gary complained, and then he turned around and crawled back down his nice cool hole to dig some more. It was toward the end of the day, and Holly was getting hot and tired.
I would like to cool off,
She thought. Holly flew off toward a pond on the edge of town. It was in front of the restaurant. The restaurant was an old log cabin from the early 1900s with an outdoor porch overlooking the water. It had a large sign saying, Frenchie's Cafe in the window. There were dragonflies and skeeter bugs on the water. There were 6 ducks swimming in the pond along with 2 Canadian geese. Behind the restaurant was a bunch of pine trees. By flitting and darting quickly, Holly skimmed into the water and back up into the air again. She didn't know how to swim, so skimming off the water was the only way to cool off. After skimming off the water a dozen times, she flew up to the restaurant. Hanging on the front of the porch was a hummingbird feeder full of sugar water. It had just been filled by Mrs. Elder, the owner of the restaurant. Holly was in hummingbird heaven.
Oh, look, Harry,
Said Mrs. Elder to her husband from outside on the porch as she waited on a table.
the hummingbirds are back after migrating to Mexico.
Whole town will be swarming with them in just a few days, Agnes.
Said Mr. Elder as he brought food out from the kitchen. He had just made a couple of buffalo cheeseburgers with green salsa and onion rings. Mrs. Elder went up to the counter and brought the food back to a couple of tourists looking out over the pond. The couple was from New York City and were wondering why their cell phones were not working.
You'll never get a signal up here in the mountains,
Said Mrs. Elder as she placed the food in front of them. The young couple looked away disgustedly from their phones and then smiled in amazement at the delicious food that was just placed in front of them. The green salsa bison cheeseburgers even had bacon and guacamole on them. Mrs. Elder came back with their drinks.
So where are you folks headed after dinner?
She asked the young couple.
We're spending the night at the Mount Princeton Spa and Resort.
They replied.
Henry,
Shouted Mrs. Elder.
you need to take me to that Mount Princeton Spa and Resort. Everybody keeps raving about it.
Your next birthday.
Shouted back Henry.
But I just had one a week ago.
Mrs. Elder complained.
How about our anniversary in a month?
She asked.
We can't go in the middle of summer tourist season. How about in the middle of October when the elk mate?
He asked.
You've got yourself a date.
Mrs. Elder shouted back. The young tourists laughed. Mrs. Elder saw that Holly was still feeding off the hummingbird feeder. She reached into her pocket and grabbed her cell phone and took a quick picture of herself with the hummingbird feeder behind her. Holly finished feeding as the sun set. She flew back to her little Heidi and fed her.
Good night, man.
Heidi said after feeding.
Good night, and may your dreams take flight.
Holly replied. The end.
Holly the hummingbird flies all around. Her wings move so fast, they
make a buzzing sound. When you add her all together, she weighs less than a pound. Holly the hummingbird's the lightest bird in town. She drinks all the nectar from the flowers in the field. The little drops that fall increase the yield. When you add them all together, they weigh more than a ton. Holly the hummingbird has a ton of fun. Holly the hummingbird flies all around. Her wings move so fast, they make a buzzing sound. When you add her all together, she weighs less than a pound. Holly the hummingbird's the lightest bird in town.